Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today's video is going to focus on what I call the War Machine saga, or the birth of War Machine. So we're going to talk about Iron Man issue 281 through 284. And starting with 281, Tony Stark is laying in a hospital bed, and it looks like the situation is dire for him. His central nervous system is shutting down, but somehow um, the head of Arcane Fusion had lost everything. So in a previous issue, there was a fusion meltdown, and it cost a lot of lives, and it bankrupted a energy company who was reliant on nuclear fusion to power their power plants. And it comes back that one of the parts was faulty, was coming from Stark Enterprises. So the head of Arcane decides that he's going to get revenge on Tony Stark no matter what. So he hires the Masters of Silence to come out and attack Tony Stark and kill Tony Stark. Because the guy's second in command, he says Stark International is a multi-millionaire, multinational company. It would take years of court wranglings and things like that to get him to admit fault and to bring Tony Stark to his knees. And that's when the guy hires the Masters of Silence, who are three highly skilled operatives, samurai, mechanical modern day samurai. And during all of this, then they easily destroy the Iron Man armor. They just decimate it, but they couldn't get to Tony Stark. So in the meantime, Stark has learned, as good weaponizers and in this state good Avengers do, that where the weaknesses were in his previous armor. And to that, he births the War Machine armor, which is one of the coolest armors that I had ever seen when I read this in 1992. I had an original copy of this, and I read it so many times that the cover came off. So this is a much, much better copy. It's a very fine to near mint copy that I've picked up along the way. But here we get to see Tony Stark continue his war against the Masters of Silence to clear his name, because at this point Tony knows that his position is terminal, and he says there's arrangements that I need to complete in order to make sure that Stark International survives, and indeed Iron Man as a person survives. So he creates this War Machine armor with just armaments out the wahoo, and it's black and gray instead of red and gold. But you've got this here, which if I remember correctly was a scope, a laser scope. You've got a minigun or a Gatling gun. You've got I think that was more of like a flamethrower, and then you've got rocket launchers, and you've got mini projectile weapons, along with all of the other armaments that he usually carries as Iron Man. So he easily takes out the Masters of Silence, even though they do start chipping away at his armor, literally and figuratively. But eventually he fights back, and he says, hey, you've been had. Now, the big bad in this whole storyline is Justin Hammer. Justin Hammer is taking the place of Obadiah Stane, who died in issue 200 as the Ironmonger. And here Justin Hammer, with Roxxon and Hydra and a bunch of other multi-global companies, have sought to take Tony Stark down and destroy Stark International and destroy Stark's legacy. So they were the ones that set Stark and Arcane and all of that up in the beginning. Now, at the end of this issue, we get to see that Tony Stark says, isn't it possible that Stark was set up, that I was set up? Do you want to kill an innocent man? And of course, their code of honor says, no, we won't kill an innocent man. So now, in the third part of the storyline, then we get War Machine fighting alongside the Masters of Silence, who were trying to clear their name as well as clear the name of Anthony Stark. And you get to see them easily dismantle and destroy Justin Hammer's security forces and operational tech. And in the meantime, even the Mandroids, which are big, giant, like ED-209 RoboCop type villains, are taken apart by this new War Machine armor. It's meant to be tactical armor instead of just a regular Iron Man defensive armor. It's got so much heavy weaponry on it, it's ridiculous. It's a mobile tank practically. And at the end of this, then you get to see Hammer is neutralized and sent to prison by Tony Stark and the Masters of Silence. Tony Stark's name is exonerated in the press, and we continue on to the further adventures of Iron Man, which leads us to the final part, which is a very somber issue where we get the supposed death of Tony Stark. He has come to his injuries. He has a DNR set up so they cannot resuscitate him or attempt to resuscitate him if he flatlines on the table. But in the end, you get to see that he has been cryogenically frozen, and they're trying to keep him that way at Stark International until they can find a way to revive him. So overall, this story is very fast-paced. That's why this video is very fast-paced. It's not an onion with 17 layers that you have to peel back. Instead, it's more like an action movie, like a Rambo or something along those lines. And along that whole story, you're still getting that ticking clock where Tony's time is ticking down. Now, this is a controversial issue simply because his friend Jim Rhodes, who had caught fire, I believe in issue 192, and Tony had to come save him. And so he'd been inside the Iron Man armor, the original Iron Man armor, and it caught fire up in space, and Tony had to rescue him. And since then, he's been afraid of being in that Iron Man armor. He's afraid that he will get caught on fire and burn up. And in the end, Tony left SI's operational control to him. And it causes a rift between him and his girlfriend, Marcy. And Marcy says, you have to choose between running SI, which you're not qualified to do, and me. And he said, well, let me sleep on it. And the next morning, he wakes up from a dream showing all of the horrors that could happen if he doesn't step into the War Machine armor. He's pissed off at Tony about dying and leaving him, this burden to bear. It's bad enough that he's already going to be taking over Stark International, but also now you're going to have him going into an armor that he swore he would never step back into again. And it gets worse, about a year from then on, well, maybe about 6 months from then on, you come to find out that Tony has been revived. But he never told Jim Rhodes that was the plan. So Jim was upset that he died, but he was more upset that Tony didn't let him in on the fact that he was going to come back somehow. So this 4-issue storyline was something that a 11-year-old me just ate up. It was, I started with these issues, and I think I did issue 281, 282, and 283, and I dropped off after Tony Stark died because at that point I wasn't sure of how the storyline was going to go. But then I picked the book back up, I think with issue 290, and then I collected it originally all the way through, I want to say 312, which was the Hands of the Mandarin. But this War Machine armor, man, this War Machine armor was something absolutely fabulous when it first came out. It was just like huge, and it was so 90s, and it was fit in with everything that was going on then. The technological boom, the armament that made him, worse than Cable, except he just didn't have pouches and stuff on him. And he had a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher rather than, a shoulder pad. But that was one of the most fun little 4-issue arcs that I've read in Iron Man in quite a while. You get to see the death of the main character. You get to see another character forcibly step into the role of Iron Man. You get to see betrayal, double-cross betrayal. You get to see the bad guy go to jail. It was amazing. And the artwork by Kevin Hopgood, who didn't stay on the title very long. I think he was gone probably a few issues after 300. So he might have stayed on the title for about 2 years. But he captured who Iron Man was and who Tony Stark was. And Len Kaminsky, who wrote these issues, was a fabulous writer and brought fast-paced energy to the table. And then he had a bunch of different inkers. One of the covers, if I remember correctly, I think it was it was 284. It's actually Kevin Hopgood penciling, and Joe Sinnott from Fantastic Four is actually the inker on this cover. Let's see if I see. That's Kevin Hopgood again. See if I see who the inker is listed. I don't see the inker listed on any of the other covers. Oh, the first issue, 281, was Kevin Hopgood with Bob Wysack. So he got to pencil and get inked by kind of a Hogan's Alley of a bunch of different really great inkers, at least on the cover. I know Andrew People inked one of the interior issues. But anyway, guys, that is a really, really fun storyline, and it's not that expensive to pick up. The issue 282 is a little bit pricey if you go look for it on eBay, but it's well worth it. And it was my gateway drug into Iron Man. I think I had read some of the Paul Ryan penciled Dragon Seed Saga about a year previous to this. I think it ran from 269 or 270 to 275. So I had read some of that, so I was kind of inching my way into Iron Man. And then I dropped it again, like I said, after The Hands of the Mandarin, because that one was kind of heavy and had me collecting a whole lot of different issues at the same time of series that I wasn't really reading, like Force Works, and I dropped the War Machine title by that point. But anyway, if you guys want a good story, check out Iron Man 281 through 284, and I think if you enjoyed as much as I did, then you'll be hooked just like I was. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.